Hi, everybody. Meteorologist Joe Chaffee. I am going to spend my time on this video doing weather model analysis of what this is how this is all going to transpire as we move through the rest of the week, through the weekend, and in the longer range, because we do have a lot of things going on. If you want to see what my snowfall forecast is specifically for the Northeast and the Mid-Atlantic states, I cut of another video earlier that covers all of that, so that you can look at that separately. But this is just going to be with models. I want to show you what's going on and how this plays out. Now, we've got this big cold high that's coming down. We've got the Arctic front, and we've got this also this the front is right through here, the first one, and then there's a second one behind it with the really cold air. And actually, it does generate a little bit of snow over central and southern New Jersey on the GFS overnight. But then that's out, of course, and the cold air comes in. Now, this high is going out virtually on top of or just to our south. This is not an ideal position for a out and out snowstorm. Everything in the atmosphere is moving along pretty much from west to east. So there's no question here that this is going to wind up changing over to rain. The question is going to be, how fast does the warm air move up? We're going to transition over from a very, very cold air mass to a warm one in a rather short period of time. And that warm air advection causes snow to break out ahead of it. And you can see it here. Now, this is Saturday morning on the GFS, and it is snowing throughout a good portion of the area at this point because there's still plenty of cold air that's holding in, but it's going to give way very, very quickly. Here's the warm front, and this is different from last week in that we're dealing with, first off, a deeper wave that's coming out, so there's more energy and more moisture coming up from the south. You've got this very warm air that's moving up. The cold air is retreating out to the east-northeast. Now, that warm air tends to get pinched back a little bit in the mountains, so it kind of wants to try and hold here in the northeast. Also, you have to watch closely. Now, this may only mean a couple of extra hours of frozen or freezing precipitation, but 2 hours at an inch or 2 an hour is an additional 2 to 4 inches for somebody. So you want to be a little careful with these warm fronts, that sometimes these sort of weird things can happen, and they can surprise both upside and downside. I just want to bear that out, that if the warm front were to come flying through here, the period of snow would be much shorter, so you would get much less. But if you see how the isobar here bends just a little bit right there, okay, I may have drawn the warm front just a little bit too far south, but there's probably going to be just a very small little wave here that develops, and that is what probably buys some areas a couple of extra hours of snowfall, because you can see from 7 a.m. to 1 a.m. the rain snow line goes flying up to the north, past New York City into the Hudson Valley. If the GFS is right, all of New Jersey is in rain at this point, including the Northwest. And you've got this area of ice where some of the cold air is going to be harder to dislodge in central Pennsylvania. And then by 7 o'clock Saturday evening, I mean, at this point, it's really warm. And also at this point, the rain may be just about over with. The warm front is way up here someplace. And you can see where the isobar bends out there. That's that little wave that forms that moves on up to the northeast. So, you're going to go from snow and maybe a brief burst of heavy snow to sleet, quickly to rain. So it depends on, again, the length of time here. We're talking about maybe a 6 to maximum 8 hour period of snow. And somebody could certainly put down a half a foot in that kind of time frame away from coastal locations. Now we have the cold front here out to the west, and then that approaches and moves through Sunday morning. Now you'll notice, I'll draw that in for you here. So by Sunday morning, the cold front's already onto the coast, and behind it is rain that changes back over to snow in some of the colder air. Now the models are trying to do this at the back edge I'm always a little leery of this because a lot of times what winds up happening is that the precipitation just shuts off as drier air comes in. There is a little bit of a wave that develops on that front. That we'll have to watch to see if that becomes anything important. Sometimes those little waves can bulge a little bit and hold the precipitation back a little bit longer, but then it's over with, of course, as we go past the Sunday night into Monday. Now let's look at the upper air pattern for the long range, because I know there's been a lot of talk. You know, cold weather and snow lovers are getting all upset. Because they think that these patterns hold on forever, and they don't. We get changes over time. You know, sometimes they stay for several weeks. Every once in a while, they lock in for 6 to 8 weeks and then change. But what happens is the pattern relaxes. We get as we move through later next week, we get a ridge that builds in the eastern states, a ridge that builds out in the west, and then you have a trough kind of in the middle. The flow across Canada is more westerly than it is northerly, so that warms Canada up a little bit. My personal view is that I think that what we're seeing here is a transition or a pattern where we're going to go into another maybe grinding process of change, and where it winds up to, I don't know. Now, we move through next week. There are some weather systems that come through. You still now have a ridge off the East Coast, and we're now into Christmas, and there's some kind of system here in the middle of the country. You've got a trough off the West Coast. You've got this ridge here. So, I mean, this would certainly favor mild air. We still don't really have an alleyway for cold air to come down out of Canada. But going through time, what the model seems to be doing, and we're going to have to see if this is how it winds up holding on, or whether this is something that it's just looking at now and it may lose it in prior runs. But, you know, that we do seem to see, you know, a ridge build back in the Gulf of Alaska toward the end of the period as we go to the end of the month. Because that happens, you can't really see it on this map, but I'll go to the hemispheric view in a second. But you'll see that there's a blocking high that's developing over Western Europe here, and you start to get a flow that comes out of Canada. You've got this strong Pacific jet with a big storm off the Pacific coast. You've got something off the Atlantic seaboard, and you know, this is, again, I think it's transitioning into something. What that something is, I don't know. The clues that I look at are telling me at this point that when we go into early January, we may see a reappearance of some kind of blocking, but where that blocking is going to be important. So I'll show you on the hemispheric view what I'm talking about. So here's that wide view of the end of the period, and there's that flow. Because of the big high in the Gulf of Alaska here, you set up that flow coming out of Siberia, going into the northwestern part of Canada and bringing cold air down. Here's the blocking high that develops over Western Europe. Now, ideally, if you're a snow lover, you really want that blocking high to be further to the west. So this is an east-based block. So we have to see how this winds up orienting itself over time. Does the block migrate northward toward the pole, in which case you'll displace more cold air southward? Does this build up also even further that winds up also possibly displacing cold air southward? Or do these blocks basically relax themselves over time, in which case you'd have a much more westerly flow rather than a northwesterly flow or northwest flow into Canada to bring down colder air going into the very end of the year and into the first part of January. So I'm going to show you just how the temperature profiles play out. We'll get a little tighter here, and I'll back up, showing you above and below normal temperatures as we go through the rest of the month of December. Okay, so you know, we go into next week, of course. So behind this system, temperatures are going to be below normal, and then we get some warming going into the Christmas weekend, which looks mild into Christmas Eve. I don't know if it's very, you know, it's somewhat mild. I don't think it's going to be crazy warm. And it's below normal in the west because that's where the troughs are. And then gradually during that last week of December, you start to see the below normals shift a bit, and the reappearance of below normal temperatures in Western Canada and some in northern Canada. The above normals in Alaska reflecting that block, that high that's building up from the Gulf of Alaska northward. The above normals in eastern Canada is because you do have a bit of a ridge here out along 60 West. You kind of want that to move a little further to the east, or you want this blocking high back over through Europe, Western Europe, to kind of press into Greenland. The edge of it is trying to, because you see above normal temperatures there, but we're going to have to just watch and see how this all plays out, as I tend to always say. So check out that video from earlier if you want to look at what I'm thinking in terms of specific snowfall forecasts for given areas. You can also check meteorologistjoechaffee.com and weatherlongisland.com, nycweathernow.com for the latest forecast for those areas, and a broader one on my broader website, meteorologistjoechaffee.com. And if you want specifics for the zones, download my app, subscribe to my forecast, just $1 a month. And also, if you've watched this long, I hope you like the YouTube video. So please subscribe to my YouTube channel. It helps me a lot with my standing with Google. It doesn't cost you a dime. It's absolutely free, and you'll get notified when new videos get put up. So enjoy the rest of the afternoon. Look for some more posts on this in the Arctic air on the websites coming up for the rest of the day and through this evening.